There is a strange paradox in the story of Jesus. By the standards of the modern world, he seems to have done almost everything wrong that a person seeking influence is supposed to do. He had the ability to attract thousands. People followed him from place to place. They crowded around him just to see him, hear him speak, or perhaps witness another miracle. At certain moments, with a single word or action, Jesus could have turned all that attention into an enormous mass movement, but he didn't. In fact, the larger the crowd became, the more difficult his words sometimes seemed to become. He did not try to keep everyone. He did not reshape his message to make it more comfortable. He did not run after those who turned away. And that raises a very different question about Jesus. Perhaps he was never looking for a crowd in the first place. Perhaps what mattered to him was what happened inside an individual once the crowd disappeared. Today, we are almost trained to believe in the power of numbers. Someone with millions of followers is considered influential. A speaker who can fill a stadium is considered successful. A movement that grows rapidly is often assumed to be winning. We count views, likes, subscribers, audiences, and members. And from those numbers, it is easy to form a quiet assumption. If enough people believe something, then it must have value. If enough people praise someone, then that person must deserve the praise. But the life of Jesus leaves us with a far more uncomfortable picture. Because a crowd can celebrate someone today and demand his destruction tomorrow. Jerusalem may be the clearest example. When Jesus entered the city, the streets erupted with excitement. People spread their garments across the road. Palm branches were raised into the air. Voices cried out, "Hosanna! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord." If the story ended there, it would be easy to call this a victory, a moment when the public finally recognized him. Proof that his message had reached the masses. But only days later, everything changed. The cheers became demands for crucifixion. Admiration became rage. The same crowd that had lifted one man up was now willing to watch him be torn down. And the most disturbing part is not simply that the crowd changed, it is how quickly it changed. Because that is one of the dangers of collective psychology. An individual may take years to form a belief. A crowd can change direction in minutes. One person shouts, an emotion spreads, someone reacts. The person beside them reacts as well. And slowly, what began as the emotion of a few becomes the emotion of everyone. In that moment, people can stop asking, "What do I actually think?" and begin asking, "What does everyone around me think?" A crowd offers a strange kind of safety because we no longer have to stand alone with our decisions. If everyone cheers, I cheer. If everyone becomes angry, I become angry. If everyone believes, I no longer feel the need to examine the belief for myself. And perhaps this is where the difference between Jesus and the crowd begins to become clear. He did not adjust truth according to the mood of the majority, nor did he treat their applause as proof that they truly understood him. That becomes even clearer after the miracle of the loaves and fishes. Thousands had been fed. For the people who witnessed it, the experience must have been unforgettable. Here was a man who could provide food when there was not enough food. A man who could apparently do what ordinary human beings could not, so the crowd continued to follow him. But why? That is the real question. Because there is an enormous difference between following someone because you believe what he says and following him because he can give you something you want. You may love the person who heals you. You may admire the person who feeds you. You may be fascinated by someone who performs extraordinary acts. But none of those things necessarily mean you have been transformed. Jesus seems to have recognized that distinction. Then he gave them a teaching so difficult that many walked away. He spoke of eating his flesh and drinking his blood. The language was shocking enough to destroy the excitement surrounding him. Suddenly, following Jesus was no longer easy. It was no longer only about bread, no longer only about miracles, no longer about standing among thousands of people and feeling that you were part of something extraordinary. Now they had to confront a teaching that confused and disturbed them, and many left. This moment matters, because anyone obsessed with numbers would panic when watching followers disappear. they would explain themselves again. Soften the message. Find more attractive language. Run after the people walking away and say, "Wait, you misunderstood me. Come back." But Jesus did not do that. He allowed them to leave, perhaps because the question was never simply how many people were standing around him. The question was why they were standing there. That is the difference between popularity and transformation. Popularity only requires people to show up. Transformation requires people to change. A crowd can be enormous, while almost no one inside it truly understands what they are following. And a very small group can carry a conviction so deep that it changes the way they live. Again and again, in the Gospels, Jesus seems to turn away from the mass and toward the individual. There is a moment when he is moving through a tightly packed crowd. People are pressing against him from every direction. Then he suddenly asks a question that makes little sense to his disciples. Who touched me? Who touched him? Probably dozens of people, maybe more. But among all those anonymous touches was a woman who had suffered for 12 years. She approached him with a different purpose. She believed that if she could only touch his garment, she might be healed. And in that moment, a profound distinction appears. Hundreds of people can stand close to someone without ever truly encountering that person. Thousands can hear the same message while only a handful allow that message to reach deeply inside them. Physical closeness does not necessarily create a genuine connection. A crowd can create noise. But an individual approaching with faith, suffering, and intention brings a story. And that seems to be how Jesus saw people. Not as faces dissolving into a mass, but as human beings with names, fears, wounds, and personal barriers. That makes the image of the shepherd even more significant. 100 sheep, one disappears. If you look only at the mathematics, 99% are still there. The loss is only 1%. A large organization might call that an acceptable loss. But the story directs our attention toward the one that disappeared. Why? Because once human beings become numbers, losing an individual becomes easy to justify. But when an individual is seen as an individual, that person cannot simply be replaced by the existence of everyone else. We see something similar when a wealthy man approaches Jesus and asks about eternal life. Jesus does not give him a slogan designed for everyone. He looks directly at the particular obstacle inside that man. His possessions, his attachment to wealth. And then comes the demand. Sell what you have. Give to the poor. Come and follow me. It is not a comfortable message. If Jesus' only goal had been gaining one more follower, this would have been an almost terrible strategy. The man might have stayed if the demand had been easier. But Jesus seems more concerned with whether the man actually changes than whether he simply joins the group. And this opens a much larger idea. We are not all held back by the same thing. For one person, it may be wealth. For another, pride. For someone else, fear. If genuine transformation is personal, then the obstacle to transformation is personal as well. A message can be delivered to thousands, but the final confrontation happens inside one human being. Nobody can change for you. The crowd can cry together, sing together, pray together, celebrate together. But eventually, every individual must return to himself, to what he genuinely believes, to what he truly fears, to what he is still unwilling to surrender. Perhaps that is why numbers can become an illusion. A packed auditorium can make us feel that something enormous is happening. But noise is not always depth. Agreement is not always understanding. Presence is not always transformation. In the modern world, leaders are often judged by expansion. A pastor with a larger congregation is often seen as more successful. A person with millions of followers is considered more influential. A movement that grows rapidly appears victorious. But when we look at the way Jesus acts in these stories, another measurement begins to emerge. Not how many people are following, but are the people who follow actually becoming different? Those are not the same question. A crowd can grow without maturing. A movement can spread widely without ever going deep. A message can become famous without ever transforming the lives of the people repeating it. The Gospels even describe Jesus doing things that seem completely contrary to the logic of fame. He heals someone and tells them not to spread the news. He performs something extraordinary, then leaves, before the attention can become a spectacle. A person pursuing fame wants every miracle to be seen. A person pursuing numbers wants every story to spread. But Jesus seems cautious about a kind of faith built only on curiosity, because curiosity disappears easily. Today, people may come because of a miracle. Tomorrow, they may chase another miracle somewhere else. Today, they may worship one person. Tomorrow, a new figure appears, and their attention immediately shifts. That is what crowds do. They search for the next thing. A new experience, a new emotion, a new person to celebrate. And because of that, any leader who lives on the approval of a crowd eventually becomes a prisoner of that crowd. He must keep giving them what they want, keep satisfying them, keep saying what they are willing to hear, because the moment he stops, the applause may disappear. Jesus seems to choose a completely different path. He is willing to let the crowd leave rather than turn his message into something designed only to make them stay, and the cost of that choice is enormous. Someone who refuses to serve the psychology of the group may eventually become a target of that very group. The crowd will find someone else, someone who promises something easier, someone who offers a clearer benefit, someone willing to say what they want to hear. And the person they once celebrated can suddenly be abandoned. Jesus knew that. Jerusalem ultimately revealed it, and still he did not change his course. Perhaps because his vision was never limited to a moment of popularity. He chose 12 people, not an anonymous mass, 12 individuals. Each was called. Each carried a different history. One of them had been a tax collector for Rome, hardly the kind of person the crowd would have naturally celebrated. Yet the same pattern appears again. Jesus does not see people only through the way society judges them. He sees what a particular human being may become. And ironically, that strategy, which appears so small, produces something that a temporary crowd cannot. The people who truly remained, the people who truly changed, the people who truly believed, they continued after Jesus was no longer physically walking among them. They carried the message forward, not because they were participating in a popular trend. In fact, they continued even when that conviction brought opposition and death. And perhaps this is the greatest difference between belonging to a crowd and being genuinely transformed. A crowd feels strong while it remains large, but a transformed individual may continue standing even when he stands alone. The crowd needs constant confirmation from those around it. Someone who has truly come to believe no longer needs the entire world to agree. That is a completely different kind of strength. Perhaps this is why Jesus never appeared deeply concerned with gaining the approval of the majority. Religious leaders could challenge him in public. Crowds could stand nearby and watch. The social pressure could be enormous. But he did not change his answer simply because he feared losing support. And that touches one of the deepest needs in human beings. We want acceptance. We want to be liked. We want to belong. A crowd provides that feeling very quickly. When thousands of people think the way we do, we feel safe. When enough people agree with us, we begin to feel certain that we must be right. But the acceptance of a crowd is fragile. A crowd loves an image, a role, a value you currently provide. When the image changes, or when the value disappears, the affection can disappear with it. A genuine relationship is different. It requires someone to know you, to know your story, to know your weaknesses, to know what you are trying to hide, and still see you as a specific human being. In the stories of Jesus, he repeatedly moves through the outer layer of the collective and reaches the individual beneath it, the woman hidden inside the crowd, the one sheep among 100, the wealthy man carrying his private obstacle, the tax collector viewed with suspicion by society. Different stories, the same pattern. The crowd sees numbers, Jesus sees people. And in the end, this produces the greatest paradox of all. A man who did not build his power through the crowd ultimately inspired a movement that survived for generations. Not because a crowd praised him for a few days, but because certain individuals were changed so deeply that they continued carrying what they believed far beyond that moment. Perhaps lasting power was never really about how many people were watching. Perhaps it was about what happened to a person after they had truly seen. And that is where the story returns to us. Because standing inside a crowd is easy. Believing something while everyone around you believes it is easy. Calling someone great when thousands of people are praising them is easy. But what happens when the crowd disappears? When there is no one beside you to validate what you believe? When your conviction begins to cost you something? When truth stops making you comfortable and begins demanding that you change? Do you still stand there? Or were you only ever part of the noise? Perhaps that is the deepest question hidden inside the way Jesus dealt with crowds. Not how many people called themselves disciples, not how many people appeared, not how many voices shouted his name, but have you actually been transformed? Has anything truly changed in the way you live, the way you see other people, or the way you confront yourself? Do you believe something is true because you have personally wrestled with it, or simply because the people around you keep saying that it is? Because in the end, the deepest transformation does not take place in the roar of thousands of voices. It happens in the moment when a human being can no longer hide inside the crowd, when there is only you and what you believe is true, you and God, you and the question. No one else can answer for you. And if you've stayed with us until this moment, thank you. Thank you for giving your time, your attention, and your willingness to look beyond the surface of a familiar story. If this video gave you a new perspective on Jesus, faith, or the power of the individual in a world obsessed with crowds, consider subscribing to the channel so you don't miss the next documentary. And if you found something meaningful here, please like the video and share it with someone who might appreciate this conversation. Most importantly, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you think real faith is shaped by the crowd, or does it begin when a person is willing to stand alone with what they believe is true? Share your perspective in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.